never thought we need an office
Right.
chair and desk. So yeah, so then me and Ankit, who was one of the co-founders, we both rushed to buy chairs and tables, and the guy delivered just in time. When I say just in time, he was a bit late. He delivered, and by the time the customer also came. So actually, the customer helped us bring the furniture into the house.
Britto, Shiva, thank you for doing this. I know it's a Sunday evening. I know you could be spending time with your kids. So the fact that you're giving us an hour and a half is really cool. And Britto, you're back in Singapore right now, no, Britto?
Yeah, I'm back in Singapore, Chinese New Year this weekend, right? So long weekend.
Nice.
I'm glad to be doing this. I've been working with Shiva for 8 years, known him for 15 years. We just
That's long.
completed our term with the current organization we're moving on, and I think some of the interesting came to my mind. Following up for this particular conversation, thought good to share. Thanks again, Shiva, for doing this. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And Shiva is leaving in a week, so yeah.
Where do you head, Shiva? You're back in Bangalore, bro. Otherwise, you're mostly based sort of.
Yeah, based in New York. I moved to the US about almost a couple of years back, and I kind of see that will be the base for next few years to come. So.
Oh, lovely.
Nice. Where in New York?
So it's Jersey City waterfront.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice view.
We call it as New York still because it's the 6th borough of New York.
Yeah.
The city gives a different vibe, actually. So
nice.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm.
So by the way, Ani and Ajay know each other from New York. They studied together and spent quite a bit of time there, right? So
good. I know Ani studied in New York. I didn't know about Ajay, so good to know that.
Okay. Yeah, same course, same.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
Apparently, the first time when Ajay reached out and he was like, "Hey, Ani, let's catch up," I was apparently not interested in catching up with him. We've become really good friends along the way.
Nice.
But anyway, I think it's really cool to see all of your journeys have kind of taken you to different cities today. But you're in Singapore, Shiva, you're in the US. Kind of started, I'm assuming, in Bangalore. And I think what we essentially want to do in the podcast it's called the Framework Podcast. I'd love to kind of cover just if someone had to start a services business today, right? So think of your persona as a potential founder. I mean, the services business is so crowded, right? It's for every marketing or cloud business, I'm sure, like I think you had some stats earlier that Shiva, I think you could share, of the number of cloud businesses that were in 2015 versus the number in 2022, right? So I think the personas for them and how can they kind of take away if they had to start a services business today. But love to start with just both of you. How did you come together? How did you start Powerup Cloud? Because it's one of the few examples of a solid services business that's getting acquired for an all-cash deal and continuing to scale today with LTI, right? So, so how did the two of you kind of get started?
So that's it's interesting. I mean, I think I'll go first on this. I had a chance to work with cloud companies, or I would say traditional IT organizations who are trying to build a cloud business for the very first time back in 2013. And it was during that time, the three cloud majors, I would say major platforms, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, kind of started setting shop in India. And back in 2012, 2013, if you see, AWS had probably 2 or 3 employees in India. And Azure and Google were still served by their Singapore team. So pretty early stages, and I think I had a chance to, at all the point in my life, be it after my engineering course or after my MBA, I always had 3 or 4 jobs in hand, so I could choose what I want to choose. So similarly, in 2012, I had 3. I mean, after my first job, post MBA, I had 3 offers to choose, and I chose probably the most less traveled road, I would say, the cloud technology in India, because it was people hardly knew about it. So that kind of kickstarted the whole cloud journey, I would say. It's 2013 until 2015. I worked with two companies, helped them build their cloud business and scale.
How behind was India behind the rest of the world? Because you said like it was just starting off. Like, was it like a couple of years, or were we just like a whole decade behind?
Probably 5 to 6 years behind. And I can probably give an example, right? So today, let's take a very large media company in India. I can't name them, but I can tell that they store at least about 30 or 40 petabytes of data on AWS. And back in 2013, the biggest deal that I closed was a 100 GB cloud storage deal. 100 GB. Where is 100 GB? And this is for one of India's premier insurance companies in Delhi. And we're talking about 10 years down the lane, we're talking about media companies storing about 20, 30, 40 petabytes of data. So it is it was like Stone Age. Yeah, it was like Stone Age. And the interesting part was to close that $100 GB deal. 100 GB would fetch about $30 per month of AWS bill.
Crazy.
Yeah. To close that deal, I had to walk for 6 to 8 months to meet the customer. It was all about education, right? It was about building confidence. They were so worried. I mean, I had a CIO of a large fashion brand in India. All of us would have bought dresses from this brand. I met the CIO again in Delhi, and he told me that, look, he gave me a logic on why he doesn't want to move to cloud. He said, look, if anything unforeseen happens, if someone is trying to hack, I can just plug off my data center, close the gates. No one can enter and take a hard disk from my IT server room. But on the cloud, I cannot say the same, because anyone can access. Because that was the level of trust back during those days. They didn't know how this whole thing works. They didn't know what if someone can access. And after seeing all this Twitter and TikTok saga, we know that employees can access data in the backend. So companies like AWS and Google Cloud have to go great lengths to actually build trust with customers. So yeah, it was a process. We had to be patient. We had to educate customers a lot. I had to repeat the same script like 1,000 times in all the meetings. It was those days, but yeah. So coming back to the story, 2 years, had worked with two companies. One company is still a premier partner of Amazon and leading partner of Azure and Google. They continue to be in the business. Another company had a good exit. They were acquired by Nutanix back in 2016, I think. So I've seen what it takes to, or at least the secret sauce in this business. So 2015, I thought, you know what, let's come out and start a company to help customers move to or adopt cloud. I would say timing, we were probably 2 to 3 years late, to be really honest.
Interesting.
Many think that we were the timing right, but actually not. We were actually late by 2 to 3 years. But it was the execution. I would say the credit goes to the execution. And we were a branding powerhouse, and we had some fantastic leaders like Britto on board. So that's how the whole thing started.
I mean, if you're talking about timing, I feel like most of the companies were 7 years late, given that Amazon, I think, started in 2008, 2009, the cloud business. And I think like Google and then maybe Microsoft really started their cloud business in 2015, right? Or was the timelines a little different?
At least in the services business, I would say timing is overrated. Idea is overrated. Funding is overrated. Yeah. It's execution, at least in the services business. I can say that for sure. This may not be applicable for a lot of product companies, not all the product companies, but services industries, it's just execution. So yeah, Amazon was a bit early, like they were the first mover. But if you see Oracle and IBM, they had different type of, so they had a different way of selling cloud even before AWS came on board. So yeah, it was, I would say Amazon executed like no one else. AWS kind of, they showed the way for other companies on how cloud platforms have to be built.
Right.
And then everyone followed suit.
Yeah, I mean, even today, actually, I mean, just to add to a point there, I had a conversation recently, and I kind of felt that AWS figured out the whole partner ecosystem very early on, right? Yes, I think Microsoft Azure and GCP are catching up, and Azure have had the traditional partners from an O365 standpoint, Dynamics. They've been there for a while, right? But I think the cloud ways of working, AWS figured out early. And I think Powerup Cloud is one of the early adopters of that working ethics and culture, be a differentiating factor for us. Yeah.
So let's talk about, so Shiva, you said, okay, fine. You know what? I'm going to start a service or business. Now I'm going to do it with this company that I'm working with right now. And you said, okay, I'm going to maybe acquire a team. So like build a team, right? So how did that kind of trigger happen? Walk us through this. So I think June 2015-ish, right?
Yes, June 2015.
How did you meet Britto as well? I think that might be cool.
I'll take
and maybe while you're doing that, just talk about what the space you're operating in is. Just, I mean, we have context, but I think just so everyone else understands the whole cloud space, where in that ecosystem you guys sit, and
actually,
what the plan was.
I have an interesting story to share. So, okay, back in the days, right? Me and Shiva, fresh out of college, we joined Tesco, UK's largest retailer. We were put up in a 3-month training institute in Koramangala while the office was in Whitefield. So it was pretty much like an extended 3-month college period for us. Someone was coming and saying something, and we had some tests to take and programs to write. We both and another friend of ours always were in the back seat, back row of the training institute, right? So pretty much like a college setup. We got along really well. And interestingly, we also joined the same team, right? Data warehouse, analytics and support and development. So there's a large team that kind of did the data work. So we joined that team. And early on, I was in the support, she was in development. And UK support in India was midnight UK time, right? So I start off early morning, 6 a.m. India time, right? So Shiva actually used to go back and forth to his hometown, right? So Tirupur, known for his garments and t-shirts and things like that, right? So when he comes back after Sunday, he takes overnight bus or he drives back. He comes in early morning and he carries a big bag with a lot of t-shirts, right? And lucky me, he directly comes to the office, opens the bag. I get to choose the first few nice ones, and within a couple of hours, people start coming in at 8:30, and it goes off, right? And Shiva, knowing that trend, carried on for 6 months. Initially got 10 t-shirts. After 6 months, it was like 100 t-shirts.
This is what, side business or
government business.
Yeah.
And to scale, he actually created, after 6 to 10 months, a marketplace website on his phone, and started doing things, right? And at that age, we were like, what was this guy even thinking, right?
Nice.
So that's how entrepreneurial mindset Shiva came up. Shiva is, right? So
I was trying to earn some extra bucks. Actually, that's pretty much what
the game is still the same. No, I think even now with everything we do is still trying to earn a few extra bucks.
The salaries are also the same since you graduated college 10 years back.
Yeah, 15 years later, absolutely nothing has changed. And I knew one thing for sure, we were always in touch. After Tesco, he moved on to do MBA, and then he was working for this cloud company. I knew one day I was hoping that he would call me and, do something and stuff. And 2015-16 was the right time. He called me, and I was glad that he called me, right? So go ahead, Shiva. Starting the team, I think, was a great part of the initial, setup that we had to.
No, I think thanks for that, Britto. Thinking back, if you have to look at that, look at what happened during the time when I used to sell t-shirts from my office desk in a privately run organization, which was a UK organization. It was very naive of what I was doing at the time. But I think the HR department did not know what to do with me, because
they're getting t-shirts.
You can't react. You can't react, right? I had the 200 t-shirt bag just below the desk, and I used to like
No way to
people used to
hide
come
that.
and
Yeah.
you know where to hide it. People are buying it like buying wheat from somebody. I mean, they used to come to me and like buy a couple of t-shirts. It was fun anyway. Yeah. So yeah. Fast forward to 2015. We I would say I will give credit to the team, to the thinking process that we had. We always kept things simple. We wanted to run a profitable business from day one. So we actually convinced a couple of clients to come on board, and so that we could start the company. We said, look, I'm starting something. We're putting some team together. Trust us, come on board. I'll give you, say, 25%, 30% discount on what your current prices were. So they were okay with that. So we were able to get started. On day one, we hired a tech team who the clients were familiar with, one or two guys. So that kind of helped us to get things started. And we were profitable from day one till the end of 4 years when we sold the company, actually. So that's a very neat trick, I would say. We just kept things super simple there. And we also, so just to explain our business, right? We were a cloud consulting company. So we partner with the cloud platforms like AWS, just stands for Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. These were the three leading cloud platforms. They provide servers on rent. If you have to kind of really simplify what they do, you can buy servers on rent, you can buy storage on rent on a monthly basis. But even though they provide this software, it's not easy for clients or businesses to adopt. So they need partners like us who can help them migrate their applications to cloud, or use storage on cloud, or build applications on cloud. So like an SAP partner or Oracle partner, the cloud partner network was just catching up, starting to bloom back in 2015. So we are a cloud partner, and we had our revenue stream had two major business lines. One is a managed services business, another one is a consulting business. Managed services business is similar to your annual maintenance contract. Imagine if you buy an elevator, you have an AMC just to ensure the upkeep of the elevator, right? So similarly, we had a managed services business which focuses on upkeep of customers' workloads on cloud. And the other one is the consulting business where we help clients understand the value of cloud, move to cloud, adopt. It's all about adoption. So adoption and maintenance. So again, we had another thumb rule that the company's salary, all the employee salary will have to be paid by the managed services business, because that's a recurring revenue for us. No matter what, I mean, even though we don't close any new customer, any new deal, that money will keep coming in because we already have existing customers who are paying on a monthly basis to us, like a subscription service. So we matched that revenue with, or that collection with, the salaries. So we don't have to worry about paying, we don't have to worry about collections for salaries because that money is coming in. So all the other deals, all the consulting deals that we did, which are one-off projects, they are like fixed scope, fixed cost project, that it's not a recurring deal, recurring revenue. You have to complete a project in order to get the money in. So all that money was used towards expansion, product development, marketing. So if you see, we kind of had an, I would say, a platform a model which kept us at check. So we don't run amok by investing a lot in products or expansion or marketing. So we knew how much we could spend, but at the same time, we ensured that all our employees get their salaries on time. So, and that helped us to be bootstrapped all 4 years without raising any money. We did try to raise money. That's a different story altogether. We'll come to that. But these were two basic principles that we had, which is always be profitable, always pay the employees from your stable business and not from your expanding consulting business. So these were the two principles that helped us guide all along during this 4-year journey.
Amazing.
And what was your, sorry, Ajay, what was your pitch to Britto to be like, listen, I want you to quit your job, okay, and join me full time? And did you already have like a client that was giving you revenue to say, okay, there's validation that what we're doing is right?
I really forgot what I told him. I'll probably allow Britto to take this up. I don't. I mean, I would have
Like
told
you
him,
don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. I think so. This is the start.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
t-shirts for life. Yeah.
Interestingly, Britto was in India at that time. So, and I think Britto had an interesting journey on his own in this whole thing that we did. So, Britto, over to you.
Yeah. I mean, he called me. I think from 6 waking up to 6 a.m. to sleeping at 6 a.m. Right? Kind of completely
Yeah.
wagon, right? But yeah, I mean, Shiva called me. Like for me, it was all about working with the right team, right? So I knew Shiva back then and the entrepreneur mindset that he comes up with, right? So when he called me, he was pretty much firm on what my role would be, the expectation and so on and so forth. I think the clarity in terms of what he had on a long-term basis and giving me that definition of the role and the scope, right? Obviously, there'll be scope to improve. In fact, I joined as a practice leader, and today I'm doing sales, and didn't even think that I would do what I'm doing right now. But at least when we join initially, I think that clarity, and also not just two people coming together, right? Getting engaged with the entire team. I still remember 3 months I was kind of working with them like on a consulting basis, and it was comfortable them thereon, and it was natural progression for me to join full time, right? So that's kind of how I got embedded within the ecosystem. And for me personally, yeah, like Shiva said, it was a journey with startup within a startup, right? Within the first year, we started getting a lot of requests on AI chatbots, some of the data analytics work that we started doing from Singapore. And it was natural for me to kind of move here to have those conversations and things like that, right? So and Singapore again, while we had good momentum going on in India, different market, different challenges, doesn't matter, right? So you're still solving for customers here. They have different challenges and partners, different relationship needs to be built. Again driving that with the support of the India team was a journey in itself, right? So that's how we kind of got started.
Yeah, I'll probably take 30 seconds on this, right? So it's trust eventually. The trust that Britto had and the trust I had in Britto. See, Britto, like I said, he joined as a tech leader who was taking care of our data practice. I think 1 year down the line, Britto came to me with a weird ask. He said, "You know what? I have been in all these sales calls that you guys do, and I like what you guys are doing. So I want to do sales. Can I start doing sales?" I was like, it was a very weird ask. I was like, Britto, I never thought this about this. It was never part of our plan. But again, I thought, you know what, he's very convinced that he could do it. So and we just won a project in Singapore. So it worked out. He moved to Singapore and he's today a business leader. He understands not just sales part, he understands the whole business part. So I think that goes a long way in a startup success. It really helped us that all of us trusted each other. The folks who didn't trust didn't stick. The folks who trusted, they stuck, and I think we all saw the reward eventually.
Right. Ajay, I don't know if you have. I know at that point in time you had a question.
Yeah. So no, I just want to touch on what Shiva said. I think the principles you laid out just to maintain profitability just makes a lot of sense inherently, right? But then I think a lot of that, there's a big difference between having those principles and then actually sticking to them, because I think you talked, and that comes to that execution you were talking about. So especially with services, I think a lot of it is workforce management, planning that workforce, how you ramp up, ramp down, keeping an adequate bench when you bring on new contracts. So I guess, how did you manage that piece? Were you just really sure of your hiring cycles and your sales processes? And can we talk a little more about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is another area where I see a lot of services firms kind of slip up. So what happened in our case was, like I said, these two thumb rules that we had, we kind of, I think the whole team understood that we cannot violate these two rules at any point in time. Because the moment we start flirting with these two rules, that will lead into chaos. That will lead into some new paths that we might not be ready to take actually. So so what happened here? These two things are sacred. All the deals that we do will have to be pegged at a certain margin. All the hires that we do will have to be within a certain bracket, so we cannot cross. So that was very clear. And just understand, while I say all this, our core understanding of finance and accounting was probably 10%. So we still don't know how to read a balance sheet. We still do not know how to read a profit loss statement or a cash flow statement. It's like, I think the first 2 years were more of trying to even understand what was happening, how to handle finance, money was coming in good. We were growing, which was good, but it was all about trying to understand, trying to keep things really, really simple. So what we did, we actually opened a center in Coimbatore because you get really good tech talent in Coimbatore as well, which was a tier 2 city at that point in time. And we had our consulting office in Bangalore. So the Coimbatore unit helped us to hire similar resources at probably 60% of the cost, Bangalore cost. So we did save a lot there. Very similar to how large IT organizations have their delivery center in India and deliver to US clients. In our case, we did deliver mostly to the India and Singapore clients. So we had 2 delivery centers. The Coimbatore was our low-cost delivery center, and Bangalore was handling some of the complex AI, ML data projects. So that helped us to hedge the cost of resources really, really well. Yeah, and we were very frugal, right? I mean, if you know how Walmart grew this big, I mean, they were very frugal in almost all they did, and we were frugal as well. The first 2 offices, if you see that we had in Bangalore and in Coimbatore, we never hired any interior designer to design the office. It was all just us buying chairs and tables and setting them up and trying to decorate as much as possible to keep our team happy. We did have free lunch in office. We did have free tea, coffee, snacks, all that in office. So it was like we did try our best, but it was mostly the culture that we were able to build.
Nice.
And this reminds me of one instance. In fact, the very first client meeting that we had in our office in Bangalore, it was a 2-bedroom apartment house back then in 2015.
Nice.
So the client called us and said, "Hey, Shiva, you know what? We're coming by 4 p.m. We want to meet you." So okay, come. But we never had any furniture in the office. We used to sit on the ground and work.
There are no coffee shops, I think, was common then.
There were no coffee shops back in 2015.
Yeah.
Like you had tea joints, addas.
Yeah.
Also, these are 4 boys working in the 20s. I feel like in your 30s, if you maybe sit on the floor, like bacha, half an hour max. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, you know what, Annie? Interestingly, we had a couple of beds. I don't know why, but we had 2 beds. So we used to sleep and work and sit on the floor, but we never had an office. We never thought we need an office chair and desk. So yeah, so then me and Ankit, who was one of the co-founders, we both rushed to buy chairs and tables, and the guy delivered just in time. When I say just in time, he was a bit late. He delivered, and by the time the customer also came. So actually, the customer helped us bring the furniture into the house. We opened the whatever the cover, the wraps, and then we sat on there and we spoke. Brilliant. So that was how frugal we were all the way until say 2018. 2018. Mid of 2018 is where we opened our first flashy office in the Unicorn Lane in HSR layout. The lane you had all Udaan and all the other Unicorn companies. Right? So yeah, frugal. We were absolutely frugal. I mean, to save cost, imagine. I can also give another instance. There were 4 of us. We had to meet a client in Hyderabad, and we were calculating if we take a flight back in 2016, 2017, I think. To Hyderabad for 4 of us, we would still end up spending about, say, 30,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees. So we took a car, one of our cars, we drove all the way to Hyderabad. We did a 1-hour meeting and we drove back to Bangalore.
Oh, wow.
And we saved about 30,000 rupees in that. So you can't, I mean, Britto being in Singapore, he knows how frugal we were, because in Singapore, it hurts even more actually than India.
Right.
So yeah. They're extremely
Yeah,
fast.
I was always ready with my bags on, and interestingly, that time, I mean, my wife Ashwini, she was doing her MBA, right? So I was like, any month if the cash is not coming in, go back to Bangalore and start working from there, right? So always ready to like pack up
Amazing.
and leave.
But I think those things compound over time, especially these small savings. I mean, that's another employee in those days. So $30,000 is no joke.
It's time saved at least, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
huge. But actually, the piece, and I love these stories and keep them coming. I think that makes this whole thing exciting. I'm actually curious on. I feel a lot of services business literally struggle on two parts. One is, hey, how do I get my first 10 customers, right? Like, and then how do I keep that pipeline going, right? Because that
Yeah.
feeds into your bench and your
Yeah.
hiring and office space and things like that. How did the two of you and the rest of you rather think about that?
Yeah, I think what we did in India initially, we kind of had to go through the same cycle in Singapore 2 years later when Britto moved to Singapore. And I can say that the same math works for almost all services, the same formula works for almost all services companies. So here is my take. So Britto, I would want you to add, right? So what is your thought process? Because you ran Singapore almost on your own. So here's what I think it worked for us. The first 10 customer, we just took or onboarded every customer that we could come across. We called our friends, our ex-colleagues, all the business contacts that we had. We just ran through our phone book twice, thrice, 4 times. I don't know how many times, but we were just trying to get as many customers as possible. We were not choosy. We were not saying no to either complex work or easy work. Doesn't matter. We never said no to low price deals. So the only thing we thought was, look, let's not run a we want to run a profitable business. That's the only thing that we had in mind. But otherwise, we were just taking anything that comes across. So I would say that's the mindset we should have. First 10 customers, just go after everyone in your phone book. Don't feel shy. Don't feel. A lot of times we feel shy. Our ego comes in the way and say, no, I don't want to call this guy. He did not treat me well and all this. No, that's absolute nonsense, to be honest. You'll have to call, and that's how it happens. 10 to 50, I would say you should piggyback on a good technology partner, especially the services companies. Like in our case, it happened to be AWS. There are customers who ride on Snowflake or an SAP or Oracle. So there are these major tech companies with a really strong partner network. So find out the right technology company who has a good partner network and a good partner practice, and their technology should be relevant to what you do on the services side, but just latch on to them and ride with them. That's your 10 to 50 or even a 10 to 80, 100 goal strategy. And the moment you hit that 50 or 100, which is kind of an inflection point, you're already kind of known in the market now.
Right.
People know who you are, and you'll have enough money, some money to start your marketing, to invest in marketing. And I'm saying all this assuming that you're a bootstrapped company. If you raise funds, that's a different ballgame altogether. But if you're bootstrapped, this is what happens. You have enough money by the time you hit 50 or 80 or 100 customers, depends on how much you build your billing rate. But then you have cash in hand to market, to do campaigns, to run LinkedIn campaigns, to conduct events for your customers. So that becomes your traditional way of building business, like any other large IT company like an Accenture or an LTI or a TCS would do. So this, I was thinking, how did we do 10, 50, 100? This is what actually happened to us, to be honest.
I think to add on to that, from a Singapore, I mean, if I add the expansion perspective, right?
Yeah.
For example, you're already set up in one base, you're moving to another, so on and so forth. You've already figured out the nuances in the base, right? From a partnership standpoint, the kind of deals that you do, how to differentiate, and so on and so forth. Singapore, while it's a new partner, new customer base, I think a lot of those learnings I took away, right? For example, how I got my first 10 customers was purely because I was just in front of AWS all the time, right? In this case, it was Microsoft. I used to have lunch with them, dinner, just find out ways to be just in front of them, right? The mind share, Just, most of them are today, even casually we have drinks and so on and so forth. I've gone on to become good friends. But initial days was just being in front of them. I think that helped us a lot, right? In fact, even in Bangalore, I recall out of the 5 days, working days, 2 days we were morning to evening there in AWS office.
Mm.
Either find reasons to have a cigarette or a chai or breakfast, whatever it is, right? So we used to find ways to just to be with them. And I think from 10 to after you get the first 10, partners know you internally. Slowly, the news start spreading internally, right? And how do you amplify that, right? I think marketing is not something services business associate very early on. For us, it was the other way around. We actually started doing a lot of those outreach very early on, right?
Right.
Usually marketing is the first thing from a product standpoint you'll have, but for us, it's a different kind of marketing, right? We need our mind share to be in front of partners, in front of the partner managers. Different persons have different, requirements, deals that they're working on, right? How do we be in front of their inbox a lot more, right? Through marketing, be it campaigns, be it coming out with innovative offers, or just shooting out newsletters and emails, so on and so forth, right? That actually got us our first 50 customers very, very quickly, in the first few months. Yeah.
Amazing.
And how much of it? Go ahead, Ajay.
And at that point, I remember Shiva was saying, you were saying yes to, and I think all companies go through this. You say yes to sort of low price deals. You say like yes to complex problems. Once you say yes, how do you then, because you're still in your early stages, your learning is still low. So how do you go about solving those problems once you say yes, whether it's the low margins or the complex problems?
Yeah. So team is important, right? And that's why we even build a company and go to our customers to sell something. So, so the tech team was taken care of. We did hire about 10 interns, I would say freshers out of college in Coimbatore, and we started training them. So we had a base team which we could, from whom we could get the job done. Number one,
right?
And we always were we always wanted to be ethical in what we do. We didn't want to oversell and then fall short. So we were always been ethical. We did get a bit adventurous when we started venturing into the AI and machine learning space,
right?
Where we started selling concepts first and then came back to figure out how to do it. But yeah, initial days we stuck to our guns. We said, you know what, we will just sell what we know, and there are enough customers in the market to buy what we build actually. So I see that another big issue because when I advise a few services I've been advising a few services companies, and I see that it becomes a chicken egg problem. So I tell them, you know what, the market is very big. Don't think that the market is small. Don't think that there are only 100 customers. The market is the moment you start thinking the market is massive, the way you decide would be very different. The way you approach would be very different. So that kind of helped us.
And how did you maybe 2023 is a different play altogether versus when you started, but you started, I'm assuming, servicing a lot of clients in India and then Singapore, right? But like, how do you decide on location also in terms of servicing? Like today, you can be like, hey, let me service somebody in the US. Or is it because yours is a cloud services play, which requires a lot of in-person, start with where you are in terms of location, then expand? Like, how would you think of location today?
Yeah, again, very good question. And I would say in today's world, in 2023, given the experience that we had building Powerup, we would approach the whole expansion thing very differently. Back in 2018, 2017, it was very different, right? We were, imagine a set of people trying to build a house. All they had was bricks and cement and sand in front of them and whatever the building materials. But none of us have ever built any house previously. And none of us even had, we had one or two mentors who kind of guided us, but none of us were in the industry like an Infosys or an Accenture, etc. So we never really kind of organically wanted to go out of India until 2017, when the Singapore team started taking note of some of the good work that we do in India, the Singapore AWS team, and the Microsoft. Actually, Microsoft was the first, to be honest. And then they started reaching out to the Indian team and said, you know what, we like what these guys are doing for your Indian customers. We have some similar problem here. Can they come and help us? So this is how it was very organic. If you see the story, but today it'll be different. Today we understand the ecosystem, so we would rather go top down. We would rather try and reach out to the local region, to the regional sales leaders, and understand is there a gap that needs to be addressed, analyze if we could meet that gap, and then take a call. And we'd be a bit more pragmatic. We would probably speak to 10 different country leaders or country sales leaders and understand where to go and next. So I think our decision making process would be very different. And probably instead of going to Singapore and Dubai and then US, we will reverse the whole, I would say, order. This time we would directly go to the US first, establish, and then move to other countries. So these are few things that we would do differently. But yeah, long story short, it was very organic back in 2019, 2018, 2017. This time, I would say we'll have to look at the market potential and go a bit more strategically.
And if you had to think about the amount you're spending, like one thing, Britto, you mentioned, like a lot of it's on mind share, when you were looking to expand in Singapore, a lot of the marketing campaigns, let's say, kicked in via email or let's say LinkedIn and things like that, right? So if you had to break it down as a percentage of spend, like for services business today, how much should they be spending towards, let's say, a sales team? How much or sales team plus collateral and all that comes with it, plus how much should they be spending as a percentage towards the marketing? And at what stage? I think that I'm also pretty curious.
Yeah. So, when you're a services startup, effectively, if you're bootstrapped, you kind of wear a lot of these hats, right? You don't really have multiple people doing multiple things. But if you want to break it down, yes, obviously sales is where we spent a lot of initial things, right? And for us, marketing was more of a mind share. From that perspective, we had a very lean marketing team, right? Mostly delivered through agencies and got some ad hoc work done, but it was mostly attending events, right? For example, AWS Azure will have the summits and so on and so forth. How do we be part of that? They have their partner events that happen within the region every month, right? There'll be a month where they'll do cold calls, right? How do we be part of that thing, right? For us, it was mostly how do we be part of their marketing campaign, because we didn't have the money to spend, right? It was mostly use their funds, be part of their marketing calendar, and do a lot more collaborative, right? Probably Shiva will be the best person in terms of money we spent, but yeah, that's my view. Shiva, any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, you're right. The only thing I would probably want to add is we never paid LinkedIn or Google or Facebook in those 4 years. It was all organic. Yeah, we never paid. We never paid a cent.
I would tell every startup to not give your money to these 3 or 4 people as much as you can. Yeah,
as much as you can. Yeah, our marketing head.
I think it's inevitable at some point, but avoid it for as long as you can.
Especially for a services company where you're partner driven, you don't have to do this because, all of us would have heard this Ganesha Kartikeya story, Lord Ganesha, Lord Kartikeya story in our life, in a childhood. So the partner network is like that. The story quickly, right? What does the story say? Ganesha and Kartikeya's parents, Lord Ganesha, Lord Muruga's parents said, you know what, the one who first circles around the world 3 times would get a fruit from us, right? So what did Kartikeya do? He climbed on a peacock and started encircling the globe. Ganesha did a smart thing. He said, you know what, I'm going to go around you because you are my world and I'm going to get the fruit from you. Yeah. And that's exactly what your partners do. You don't have to run around the world every time. Your world is your partners for services companies. Just sell to them. They will sell to your end customers. You have to be smarter about it. It's a lot of companies burn, I mean, I don't know, a lot of dollars in LinkedIn marketing, etc. We had massive return by ensuring that our partners, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google Cloud, knew who we were, what we brought to the table, what were our price points, and what were our success stories. So that ensured that we don't have to spend any penny to these guys. We did spend some money on events, like we hosted events, like dinner events and lunch events, but that's what you need for a services company when it comes to spending on the marketing side. But yeah, so this actually helped us. So I keep saying the same thing.
Nice.
Please amplify, use your partners, your amplification network. You don't have to do the hard work, do the smarter work.
And then, okay, so you're expanding, and that's amazing. I mean, I feel like at one point, I mean, how big was the team? 200, 250?
220 was our maximum size. And I think we had about 800 employees go through our system in the 4-year period, which includes attrition and all of that.
And this was primarily Bangalore, Coimbatore, and then Singapore, I guess.
Bangalore, Coimbatore, all the tech resources, tech talent. Singapore team was our sales team. Yeah, primarily Bangalore, Coimbatore, yes.
How are you recruiting so quickly? That's another piece, right? Like you're getting on, now let's say you figured out your sales play, which is partners are your best friends. You're getting massive inbound. How are you recruiting at scale? Or was there an element of training at all?
And the second part to that, are you recruiting at a fixed timeline, or are you projecting those sales and waiting for the sales to kick in before you recruit? Or are you just having confidence in the sales team?
No, we never had a confidence in sales team. Because I was because I was leading the sales team, so I cannot say we were confident. Because it goes to the same principles, right? Our singular thought was that no one should miss their salaries,
right?
And we should not take risks or major risks that would affect that. And but having said that, we did take a lot of risks. Now, say when we were 220 people, almost 60 of them were building a product, and we had zero revenue from the product. And see, imagine 60-member payroll. We could have used that money. Britto could have bought a house in Singapore. I could have bought BMWs. We could have done all of that. We were definitely taking a lot of risks. Companies who saw our balance sheet just 1 month before we sold Powerup Cloud, there are many companies, very large multi-billion-dollar companies who are interested. The ones who saw our balance sheet and cash flow statement, they could not believe their eyes what they saw, because we had to bring in close to 2 crore Indian rupees every month to pay salaries. And 80% of our customers were in India. And the collection in India always is late. It's
right.
Don't pay. Most of them don't pay on time. They'll be 10 days, 20 days, 30 days delayed. Singapore was amazing that way. I mean, we had Singapore and US customers, they paid on time anyway. But yes, so we never we always stuck to that none of our employees should be affected by this. So we stuck to those guns, and during this 4-year period, we ensured that we close the deal first and then hire people. We did maintain a very small bench. Say I would say 5 or 6 or 7 people bench at best.
That's nothing. Yeah,
that's number one. We always strive. We strived hard to keep our utilization rate quite high, say 80% and above, so that the efficiency is high for the whole company. Number 2. Number 3, we hired mostly freshers and groomed them, and we actually made them billable within 6-month period. So the training process was quite intense. So that was another key aspect. And the 4th thing that I could think of is the pyramid structure, right? So all the IT services companies would speak about the pyramid structure. You have your architects on top, you have your senior engineers in the middle, and you have your junior resources at the bottom. So we were, I would say, the top architects that we had, we paid them like crazy. We used to hire from Amazons and Microsofts of the world. So, and we had to compete in a market where Flipkart and Ola and Oyo were paying like guns. I mean, they were blazing. They're paying like crazy, right? So So we ensured that our top talent, the key leaders, tech leaders, stuck with us. We ensured that they don't. There's no parity, or there's no. We paid them the market price, or sometimes even above market. Our middle layer was folks who graduated through our system and reached that stage. So they are power up, born and brought up, I would say. And then our entry layer, or the bottom layer, who are the junior resources, were all freshers who were trained. So this kind of worked for us. I'm not sure it will work again now, but I think the math never fails. Whenever we do the math, it always shows that this model actually works. Bit of what would you? I mean, what was your experience?
Yeah, I think, also, I think culture played a huge role. A lot of our tech leaders actually took on themselves to build the team.
Britto, I think we lost you for a bit.
So I was saying the culture plays a huge role as well, right? Like technical leaders actually took them on to themselves to hire and train them. To be honest, 6 months was actually billable time, but they were actually shadowing in the very second week or third week onwards, right? And they used to see how the senior guys did the work on job, and they're getting small tasks to be completed, and then eventually they became the growth was, interesting. One of the guys I recruited is right now as a solution architect in one of the big companies here. The growth he's had in those 4-5 years with Powerup Cloud from that standpoint was like pretty huge, right? So I think a lot of credit to our tech leaders to actually have the culture of training and continuously building the teams. Well, yeah.
Ajay, you said you had a question.
I mean, it was actually the roles of Britto's last point, actually, and more to that, like how do you create that culture? I mean, because especially if you're poaching people from, let's say, big names like Amazon, Ola, and I mean, like, even if you pay above market, like, there's only that much above market you can go, because these guys have huge salaries anyway. So how do you convince them to come to compared to the other brands, a less known brand, and just create that culture, I guess?
I don't know. I mean, if I answer this, I might be biased. I would say, no, we sold better, etc. I'll probably I'll ask Britto to go first, then I'll fill in what he might have missed. Actually, Britto, why did you go first?
See, in fact, recently I had a conversation with one of the co-founders who've been in the similar space for a long time. I think a lot of them looked up to Shiva early days, right? Pretty much. I mean, a lot of them call him the AWS golden boy of India, who sorted with the partnership model with AWS and the trust that they had, right? A lot of times they knew they could actually trust him as an AWS guy in the meeting, right? So I think we had that leverage to kind of capitalize. So a lot of people, when we interview who are known in the ecosystem, pretty much knew the kind of growth that we were having and wanted to be part of it, right? For example, the teams that I grew in Singapore, although we were lean, most of these folks who came on board were already known us, right? So they have seen the kind of work that we do. I think that from that perspective, it was fairly easy. Again, that is also another PR and marketing benefit I feel that we had, right? Amplifying your efforts on LinkedIn will also attract the right talent to your organization.
Yeah, no, I think that's the reason I didn't want to answer this to begin with. That would come. But in addition to that, yes, we did give ESOPs. Imagine at least 40 of them were part of the initial pay, I would say, cycle as part of the sale that we had with LTI. At least today, 3 years down the line, we had at least 12 or 13 of them still in the system who are benefited. We always believed in distributing wealth. Statistically, if you just look at the numbers, 40% of the sale amount went to the team, and so we were not. And I see a lot of companies, especially the services companies, where the founders own 95%, 96%, etc. So we kind of behaved like a product company for a services company when it comes to ESOPs, number one.
Mm.
Number two, we did pay really good salaries. We always believed that one's lifestyle should not be affected, because then one should not change their lifestyle due to salary constraints, so that because that might affect their work as well. So that's number two. Number three, like Britto mentioned, we had built a name for ourselves in the market in the first year and a half. We started winning an award. Every year we won an award actually. 2016, we were Innovation Partner of the Year with AWS. 2017, Analytics Partner for APAC by Microsoft. 2018, Partner of the Year, India by AWS. So
Nice.
every year we won an award. So we were consistently building our brand, and people liked what they saw. Very straightforward. In the office, we were super humble. I mean, humility is something that we always wanted our team members to follow. So that was non-negotiable. We have asked people to leave because they were too arrogant, or they were, I would say, not fitting into the culture purely on that. So humility. So these are few things that did really help us build a good culture internally.
Nice.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And walk us through some of your, like, see, one thing at least, like we look at like today's ecosystem, everyone's kind of celebrating the fundraising piece, or they're celebrating the acquisition piece, which is rare.
Yeah.
I think on both parts it's kind of rare. So one is you mentioned earlier on, hey, like you were thinking of fundraising, right? So what was your pitch on the fundraising? Was it more, hey, we're building this product and we need to fund this, or yeah, like, because is it common also for services companies to look for fundraising?
Oh yes, I mean, services companies will have to, at least in my case, when my pitch to investors had EBITDA as a key aspect. Look, we were always 35%, 40% EBITDA, right? It might vary. It always hovered between 35 to 48, to be honest. 48 was the peak EBITDA that we had when we were about 150 people plus, which is very good for a 150 people company.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We were able, right? Yeah, we were able to showcase that we could execute a low cost delivery center from Coimbatore, which many companies struggle to have at that point in time. We were also building products, so we were able to show that, look, there is future in these products, and we want investment to build these products further. But none of it worked actually, right? I mean, I can say 40 to 50 pitches I would have made, starting from Sequoia and any brand that you can think of in the US and India. But the magic moment came in 2019 when I think we won an award with AWS as the Partner of the Year, and people started noticing, and the name started spreading in the market that, hey, Powerup is looking to exit. So all that kind of brought in a lot of eyes. But the pitch was always around expansion. So for services business, it was about expanding to new countries, bringing the model to US and other countries. And for product company, it was about building a very strong IP in a niche space. So this is exactly what we kind of kept doing time and again.
But what was your motivation to look for an exit, and how do you even start that conversation, right? Like,
yeah,
because you want to have leverage also in that conversation.
and before that, just going back, you said most of those conversations weren't fruitful. Was it just like, oh, this is too good to be true, and I don't want to like risk it in something I haven't done before, or was it just is it just that it's not the 10x growth of a 100x growth of a product company? And
I would say we were not good enough, to be honest, in our pitch to investors. We know how to close a deal, right? We know how to close a deal with customer, but to investors, we were probably not hitting those right chords, to be honest. That's number one. We can only blame ourselves, right? I mean, if investors saw that there is potential, they would have invested for sure. So I think that's number one. An investment into services companies was always low. Is always even low actually, even now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. There is this well-known phenomena that services company is a low risk, low return investment.
Low return.
Right. And a product company is a high risk, high return investment.
Yep.
And that's something that, say, at least Powerup changed that scenario model, because Powerup, though, was a services company, we were taking massive risks. And in 4 years, we went on to sell the company for $18+ million, completely bootstrapped in India. The equivalent price that a US company would have paid to another US company of similar size would be about $55 million. We had similar sized companies in the US with delivery teams outside of US getting sold for $50 million plus. So it's about 3x price. It's the purchase power parity is very different in India and in the US. We missed a trick there. If we had probably 50% of our customers from the US, our price point would be very different. We kind of missed a trick there. But going back, I would say in our case, we were not selling probably well enough. We were not selling those right points. And we were too risky. Our balance sheet was like, it's too risky. You cannot sleep at night looking at our balance sheet. I can only imagine the number of meetings that I had with vendors who kind of delivered services to us. I can only imagine the number. I can only recollect. There are so many meetings where they literally humiliated us. They said, "Look, you're kiddos. You don't know how to run a company. Blah blah blah, and all this thing." And while I was hearing all this, I had term sheet in my hand. I have a term sheet. We were about to be acquired, but I couldn't say them all this. But yeah, you had to cross those paths. It's not always rosy. You'll have to hear all this. You'll have to keep the vendors waiting, etc., etc. But yes, I would say we would probably position ourselves differently. And a good example is a company called InstaDeep. I don't know if you're following news. It is yesterday's news. They got acquired by BioNTech, a pharma company. InstaDeep is an AI and machine learning consulting company based in UK. They are a Tunisia-born company. Just for a 250 people consulting company, they sold their business for $600 million. Oh, wow. It's about $2.5 million per employee for a consulting company, for a services company.
Unreal.
And right. Why that value difference though? Why is the multiple so high?
No, so yeah. Number one, the AI machine learning focus that they have, which is a very niche service, a premium skill to have, number one. Number two, they have had a very strong track record of delivering excellent AI ML services. Last year, a year before, they raised $100 million Series B round for a services company again. They have built some accelerators and IPs. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you select the right technology and the practice line, you can be good. You can be a very attractive, I would say, business for investors to invest. Imagine if you're a Snowflake partner today, people would want to invest in you because they know that there is an exit path. If you're an AI and machine learning company, there is an exit path. Like OpenAI would soon open up the partner network. So partner with them, build a business. We can sell the business for $200 million if you execute well. So the landscape is changing. We just have to be smarter about which technology we choose and how do we build.
Actually, I have a question for you also. So Shiva, I mean, given that experience, what are the 2-3 things would you give advice as inputs? What founders needs to be prepared before going to an fundraising conversation, right? For example, I remember a lot of calls we had in terms of finance and balance sheet, right? What are the projections, right? I mean, those basic things that you need to be in place, right? What are your learnings, and what are those 2-3 things that you would
get a mentor? I mean, we got mentors, really good mentors, but quite late, right? Almost last year. But get mentors, number one, good mentors. Number two, practice your pitch with very small investment VC firms, so that you know where you're lacking. Ask for feedback, so that when you start reaching out to bigger companies, your pitch is much more refined. Number three, I would say go through your partner network. Take AWS, Azure, Snowflake. They all have their investment teams. So go through them, ask for their support, validation, ask them to work. So they are like free consultants, free McKinsey consultants who will work for you, work with you to build your pitch. So make use of those services. Number 4, even before you go to these VC firms to raise funds, try and be part of an accelerator like a YC. There are a ton of accelerators that have come on board now. Antler, a lot of them are there. Try and be part of an accelerator so that you get a taste of what it is. You get an accelerator backing as well. I think these are at least few things that comes to my mind. Networking is another important thing. You will have to get your name across a lot of investors through marketing, through traditional marketing channels. Be in those events where you have these VC guys attending. So that's another one that I can think of. I think these are few things that we may probably do today if you have to raise funds actually.
See, one thing you talk a lot about, and both of you actually, both Shiva and Britto, you talk a lot about the partner network, right? And I do.
Yeah.
I mean, we run a services play, and I think I'm sure there are services with every ecosystem. Like, do you feel like there's a partner network with every ecosystem as well outside of cloud that you can tap into?
We'll have to look at that, right? I mean, I don't know if I can say with confidence that everyone has a good established partner network in every field, but I think having good partners and riding on their success, using their distribution, using their channel as distribution channel would be fantastic. Tech makes it easier because that's well known. Other services, I think we'll have to double click and see. In our case, it did really work. It's all about amplifying effect, right? Take the same story, the Lord Ganesha, Lord Muruga story, and fit it in your business and see who you can ride on. It's all about trying to figure out who you can ride on, who you can, how can you be smart about getting the distribution channel. Just see how Microsoft Teams kind of ate Slack's market. Teams had a fantastic pre-installed distribution channel in Microsoft, right? All they had to do was bundle it for free in their Dynamics package, in their E5, E6 package. Done, boom, you're done. Slack could never get that distribution network. So it's all about finding a partner who has a really good distribution network. And the best part is this partner may not be in your line. It could be a different line. They could be in a different line, and they can still piggyback and sell your services to their end customers. We saw a lot of fintech companies partner with Amazon and Microsoft and sell to banks through AWS Microsoft partner network. Somebody imagine who's built a credit card fraud detection engine would be called considered as a fintech company, and they won't have any natural partners in their ecosystem. So what they did, they joined hands with these technology companies and reached out to banks through these technology companies to sell their fintech service. So you can always find, I would say, a complementary business lines and find and make use of those partner networks.
I think the mindset is also changing, right? For example, the traditional partners in some way who are competitors to AWS and Microsoft 10 years back wouldn't have thought of partnership. For example, they have their own racks, they have their own services they provide. But today they figured out a model where can I give networking as a service, right? Obviously, there's a competition business line, but identify asset that you can partner with, and also I feel the mindset among partnerships have changed. Like 10-15 years back, if they had a set of customers, right, they wouldn't want to reveal anything to anyone, right, whether a competition or not. But today it's not the case.
Right.
The partnership is a very key channel where in any line of business, I feel that's an important channel to consider. Yeah.
And one point I want to add before I forget it, I think this might be an answer to one of your previous questions. What also helped the Powerup was we had 2 or 3 companies as companies to look up to, and we tried. We kind of built our strategy very in line with what they built. We are not born genius, right? We're not saying that, look, we can come in and build something on our own without any external, I would say, inputs or learning. We actually this is another thing that I kind of advise to services companies. Find your market leaders, one or two market leaders who you can relate to, and just follow on their tracks, follow on the tracks that they've built. You would be able to do a lot better. It's all about execution, and that's why I said execution eats strategy for lunch. Culture eats strategy for. We
100%.
keep saying it again and again. I can, at least there are 5 or 6 businesses today who are similar to Powerup, who came out of Powerup, and they're doing pretty well because the model that we built, they were able to emulate, and they're doing it pretty well. They're profitable, they are growing. So yeah, I would say execution is key, and try and find 1 or 2 companies as the companies that you look up to.
That's actually good advice. I feel like that North Star, actually 2-3 things that you mentioned, I think were quite interesting. One is just like principles that you guys created early on, right? Because that needs to be kind of your guiding or your rudder for your boat, right? And then similarly, this piece, like if you have a North Star for the kind of company that you want to be, Hacker Rank, my wife works for Hacker Rank, they talk a lot about Amazon being their North Star in terms of what the culture needs to look like, what the processes need to look like, right? So how well they execute. So I get that. I think that's
And find a partner with a good distribution network, who you can, where your results or where your efforts would bring you bigger results, more results,
right,
larger results. Yeah.
Sweet. So that's cool. I mean, what's next, Siva Britto? I mean, you've been acquired. 3 years of Powerup with LTI is kind of done. I know, Shiva, you have 1 grand capital, and I remember you sent an email with 1 grand as well, so I went and checked that out. So what is the next phase for the 2 of you? How are you guys looking at the next few years?
You've been speaking, but what do you have in mind?
I think get a job with all the tech layoffs announcements in the last 2 weeks. It's pretty crazy, but I also feel there's opportunity to during recession. I think it's the best time to invent and do something. I think for me, a bunch of things, right? I've been a great hands-on AI data and analytics and so on and so forth, right? So I understand the tech world of that, and I also have learned the trade of cloud business and amplify and emulate this, right? So for me, how can I combine these two and kind of build something for the next, right? I think that will be my sweet spot from a journey standpoint. I think today, one of the answers to your previous question in terms of location, I think the pandemic also has kind of changed that term, right? You can be anywhere and start a business and still have a go-to-market strategy. I think building a global brand, that can solve some interesting problems would be a sweet spot for me.
We didn't speak for the last 1 week. I think the last time we spoke was about 10 days back. So what I say right now might be news to you also. So I'll call you after this. I will speak tomorrow.
Nice.
So yeah, no, it's like a director of. I mean, if you see movie directors, they always have 1 line to begin with, one very strong storyline. It'll be just a 1-liner story, and then they'll start building on top of it. Then they'll build their base story, and then the screenplay, etc. So I would take that analogy. So I have a 1-line idea right now. I want to be an entrepreneur again. I want to start building something more refined, I would say this time, and something bit more, I would say, smarter in terms of how we execute. I believe in wealth creation big time. I see that if you are gifted with that, please make use of that, because you can change lives of your own, and you can change the lives of a lot of people around you. So if you're gifted with that, please don't throw away and go and work for somebody else. Don't do that. So that's I always, even in the companies that I worked for in the past, any interesting character that I come across, I would always push them to become an entrepreneur, go out and start something. So yeah, Brett, I'll call you. But again, the point is, what's next is it's going to be another one, but we'll have to. I want to build the whole story and screenplay out. It'll take time. It'll take a couple of months to build.
And this time around, would you look at it? I mean, I feel like second time entrepreneurs, and this for you also, Britto. Do you look at it as, because the success story helps you next time around if you ever looking to raise a round? I think that definitely that path maybe is a lot easier, right? But you might also want to go bootstrapped more because, hey, you have control, hit a certain place, and then maybe raise a round. So how are you thinking about essentially fundraising this time around as a second time entrepreneur?
Interesting. I mean, I would say it's a bit easier compared to first time because now we have a track record. One of the companies that I've been advising, they are getting acquired as well. So I can actually see 2 exits in the portfolio or on the advisory portfolio already. So so we kind of understand this game of how to build value, build wealth for not just employees but also for the company that who's acquiring you. So second time fundraising, or if you're fundraising for your second startup, it's definitely a bit easier. But the big question is, do you want to raise funds at a very early stage, right? So that's a big question because then you give away too many shares too early, and there is no way to recoup the moment you start losing those percentage. I mean, my thought processes are the way I'm thinking is, you know what, you have enough funds to put in your own capital and take it to a certain stage and then bring in investors so that everyone, it's a fair, I would say, setup. And the moment you put in your money, you know that you'll have to build a profitable business. You don't want to build a very wacky idea, right? You don't want to start building ready-made houses for Mars because that might happen 50 years down the lane. So you won't go after those deals. So yeah, my view was use your whatever money you got, invest, build value, and show the value to raise funds. Britto, what do you think?
Yeah, I think value creation is a great point. Right now, I think why is the question, right? Why do you need it and why do you need it now? I think if we have a convincing answer to both these questions, I think we'll figure out a way to fundraise. I think that's not a challenge.
Awesome, man. I think that was great. I think we got a lot of great content. Ajay, anything else before?
No, this was. I think this was great. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I think I personally learned a lot. I think anyone who listens to this, there's a lot to learn as well. A lot of great takeaways. So thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Pleasure. This is good sharing. Going back some of the moments.
And thanks for the stories, guys.
To be honest.
Yeah, I think the learnings were great. I think the stories with them, I think it just adds so much more context, makes it more fun for us also.
Yeah. So random, actually. My first job was also out of Tesco. Out of college was
Tesco seems to be
is the place
breeding ground. Yeah. That's the model of the story.
Maybe not a great thing for Tesco because people want to quit.
Why not? Great story. We build entrepreneurs' future.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the only point I want to bring up, I still remember meeting Shiva and he talking about his t-shirt business.
That's amazing.
And if anybody is already entrepreneurial at that age, I think like success will eventually happen, right? So good
100%.
No, thanks for that. I mean, I think it was eventually end of the day a team effort, and all I could do was just ensure that there is the base culture, the values that you believe in. So we don't want people to cross those values. If you are able to stick to that and execute and give enough freedom. I mean, I can say this, Britto had enough freedom for him to run the whole Singapore thing. He just had to pay me a big amount every month. That's it. I didn't care about what is he doing, how many meetings is he taking. We just want to run things profitably. So freedom, trust, it all goes a long way, but it also helps that if you're friends and who trust each other. But looking forward to many such conversations. All the best to you guys and what you're doing. This is fantastic. I would love to hear more stories, and if you see, every story is very different from all the 100%. Entrepreneurs and things that I'm looking forward to hear more such stories and continue to learn. It's good speaking to you all.
Awesome.